Going into this new Naked Gun film, I was definitely skeptical. I mean, it's not 1988 anymore. Liam Neeson is no Leslie Nielsen, even if they have the same initials. And the Zucker, Abrams, and Zucker trio behind those films, as well as Airplane and Top Secret, retired from the industry. So that's why I feel that I have to say at the top of this video, before anything else, that despite my expectations, The Naked Gun is not a complete affront to the iconic trilogy. It's not even disappointing. I've just got some thoughts.
Fresh out the
If anyone had the immature and hilarious sensibility of Zucker, Abrams, and Zucker since they left Hollywood in the 90s, I'd say it would be the trio Lonely Island. With their films Hot Rod and Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping, and their iconic sketches and songs, they had an irreverent style inspired by the blooming online world. So it's a great choice to have the third member of the Lonely Island, perhaps the least recognizable but still just as funny, Akiva Schaffer, direct and co-write this film. The other two writers are relatively younger in a career sense, with writing duo Dan Gregor and Doug Mand making their first feature film in 2018 with Most Likely to Murder. Rounding out the minds behind the sequel are Seth MacFarlane and his production company Fuzzy Door's president, Erica Huggins. That's quite the crew, and it shows. The pacing is pretty great, and there's just enough pointlessly drawn out bits that really remind you of the comedy you get from a Lonely Island or a Family Guy beat, where you're forced to watch an okay joke escalate for so long that it's hilarious now. No spoilers, of course, but if you've seen the film, then you'll know exactly what I mean by the winter getaway sequence. In front of the camera, we've got star of the show Liam Neeson as Frank Drebin Jr. and his love interest Pamela Anderson's Beth Davenport. Much like Nielsen, Neeson has the history of prestige dramas like Schindler's List, but also brings the self-indulgent boomer fantasy films like Taken, which add a layer to the self-parody he carries out in this film. There are more action sequences where Neeson, actually punches people than there were in the original trilogy, and I think that's smart. It's a somewhat inspired meta-narrative that culminates in a comment in the final shot of the film. I have to confess, though, I'm just not the right age to have seen Pamela Anderson in literally any major role. I'm obviously too young for the Baywatch golden years, but I'm also too young for her pivot to satire in films like Borat or Scary Movie 3 and Superhero Movie. While I definitely plan to check out those latter two films maybe in a future video, I haven't seen any at the time of writing this. I wasn't blown away by her comedic chops, but I think she gave this role what it needed, especially when it's kinda half the point that she's a one-dimensional cutout of a female character.
Drive forward 30 feet. Pretty smooth.
Oh! At the station, his partner is Paul Walter Hauser as Captain Ed Hawkins Jr., his boss is CCH Pounder as Chief Davis, and a prominent side character is Eliza Koshy's Detective Barnes. If you were watching YouTube in 2017 or whenever she blew up, y'all would have the reaction I had when she popped up. Unfortunately, my theater was more the type to be excited for the Weird Al cameo. Millennials, man. Anyways, I think all three of these supporting characters really excelled in their moments, but the script didn't give them much to do at all. When you compare this to how central OJ was to the conflicts of the originals, it becomes even more disappointing. They could have all gotten more time to shine if the film didn't have the unnecessary level of focus on the final battle and villains' detailed plan that it did. Speaking of, our two main villains are Danny Houston in a Bezos, Musk, Zuck, Trump amalgam role, and Kevin Durand as his henchman, not Kevin Durant. And that's where we get to what's most interesting about this film, to me. Yeah, it's consistently funny and has a couple jokes that really had me laughing out loud, but it's also got this indelible fingerprint of 2025 on it that's so interesting. I mean, the first Naked Gun literally opens with a meeting of all of America's enemies circa 1988, so obviously this is nothing new to the franchise, but I kind of want to put this film in conversation with all the other billionaire parodies we've been subjected to as an American public. So, the regular review part of this video is over, and now it's time for the Certified Miserable Socio-Political Tangent. Ever since Parasite won the Academy Award, we've lived in what I'd consider a dark age of the ultra-rich parody. I want to be clear, I'm a college student in California, so obviously, I love criticism of the rich as much as the next guy, maybe more, but it's the sheer lack of inspiration that pisses me off, not the topic itself. I think these trends were already emerging from Trump's election. Take Succession starting in 2018, whose cast has been accused of being an almost one-to-one parallel to the Trump family. But I think it's really with Parasite, the end of the first Trump term, and the stagnation of the lockdowns that triggered this current wave of bourgeois satire satire that entirely lacks genuine interest in interrogating the myths of capitalism. To me, an obvious effect of the media, news, television, comedy, and film surrounding the Trump presidencies on your average centrist or neoliberal is this idea that the fun to be poked at the rich comes from their idiocy. These billionaires are all secretly idiots. Trump is dumb, let's make fun of that. While this can be good fodder for Jimmy Kimmel, I find it to be actually dangerous to the goals of anyone trying to reform society in any sense, or make art that aims to help the world. That's why the pre-Trump analyses of the rich, like The Social Network or Eyes Wide Shut, are so much more interesting. And obviously, yeah, I just cherry-picked two incredible films from like a decade apart, but I think they illustrate what I think is true across the board. The structures of power are what need to be ridiculed, not the specific men on top. And if you do parody the specific person, it can't just be a portrait of buffoonery that doesn't accomplish shit. I hate to say this because I don't want to give them any credit, but most of those billionaires are not bumbling clowns who don't know what made them rich. In fact, they're fully aware of their sins. They just don't give a f***.
You want to make some money here? Use your white boys.
Fresh out the gate again, time to raise the stakes again.
Almost forgot.
Played again. Y'all cats know we always play to win.
In 2018, Boots Riley, musician and organizer, released his first feature film, Sorry to Bother You. Starring Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, Steven Yeun, and Armie Hammer, Sorry to Bother You is an incredibly casted, written, and shot film that I've considered Dadaist ever since I learned what the f*** Dadaist meant. Although it features Armie Hammer as this not-so-different guy than who he actually is, and an extended sequence with all the hallmarks of the films we've discussed, its heart doesn't lie in thumbing its nose at the rich. Sorry to Bother You isn't about how Armie Hammer is stupid. It's about the internal conflict in Lakeith Stanfield and how he doesn't exactly know what the future holds. It's about the strength that can come from a collective, about how the power of a CEO only comes from his employees, and about how capital is powerful, but workers are stronger. If that sounds communist to you, it is. But all office schmucks who see the corruptive nature of power can appreciate the film. And it's because Riley actually has a belief system that his film doesn't come across as nothing. You don't have to agree with Marxist-Leninism to get it. For example, Bong Joon-ho has a belief system. That's why even when Mickey 17 has Ruffalo doing Trump more than Alec Baldwin even does Trump, it doesn't fall apart as a cardboard representation. He has something he wants to say beyond billionaires are dumb or billionaires have too much power. He has solutions. Parasite illustrated the problem brilliantly, spurring dozens and dozens of films attempting to display the problem as well as he did. But very few have tried to pitch a solution.
Take a chair.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't believe I got into all that in a Naked Gun video, but let's get back to that movie. Like I said, The Naked Gun has a central antagonist hell-bent on reducing man to his primal state, to use technology and media to sow divisions amongst people. Sounds like Fascism 101. Although it doesn't present a solution on the level of Mickey 17 or Sorry to Bother You, despite all preconceived notions of this franchise being dumb humor, Danny Huston's Richard Kane is relatively, particularly by the film standards, intelligent. He's capable and vicious, occasionally even killing people directly without the use of his henchmen. That's why, although The Naked Gun is yet another billionaire parody, it's not exactly the same as The Least Interesting. The generic obsession with electric cars and delivery systems represent the laziest portions of the film, but the analysis of nostalgic manipulation by wealthy leaders is genuinely original, at least in the studio comedy space. Although Shaver finds himself in some of the pitfalls of this satirical subgenre, it's ultimately refreshing, wholly of the current moment, and funny pretty much the entire runtime.
Full clip. You wanna mess with this? Gangstar. One of the best yet.
Thank y'all for watching this video. I know I could have done more talking about The Naked Gun, but honestly, I just wanted to talk about this little thing. One newspaper comic from 1890 is more interesting than like 20 of the movies combined, you know, like Blink Twice, The Menu, Triangle of Sadness, whatever. I'm not even necessarily saying that any of those films are bad, or any of the films that do this sort of generic satire are bad. I just feel like there's just a version that's so much more inspired and genuinely useful. So, yeah, I assume at this point there's like things for y'all to click on the side. So, if you want to click it, I'd appreciate that. Thank you guys for watching.